Long before cities, roads, or even civilization existed, the African wilderness was a place where survival came before everything else. Every sunrise brought new dangers, and every sunset was a victory for those lucky enough to stay alive. Among the scattered groups of primitive humans lived a young girl unlike anyone else in her tribe. While the others saw every predator as an enemy, she was fascinated by the animals that shared their world. She believed the forest held more than fear. It held life, mystery, and unexpected connections. One quiet morning, as golden sunlight filtered through ancient trees, the girl wandered deep into the jungle searching for wild berries and edible roots. Suddenly, she heard a faint cry coming from a patch of thick bushes. Curious but cautious, she slowly pushed the branches aside. There, lying helpless on the forest floor, was a young jaguar cub. A sharp stone had become deeply lodged in its paw, leaving the frightened animal unable to move. It growled weakly, terrified and in pain. The girl froze. She knew that jaguars would grow into some of the most powerful predators in the wilderness. Helping the cub could one day cost her own life. Walking away, however, meant leaving the helpless creature to die. For a long moment, she stood silently. Then compassion overcame fear. Moving carefully, she knelt beside the cub and gently removed the sharp stone from its injured paw. The cub cried out in pain, but never attacked. Using broad leaves and healing plants from the forest, she wrapped the wound as gently as she could. Over the next several days, she returned again and again. She brought fresh water, gathered food, and patiently cared for the injured cub until it slowly regained its strength. Weeks turned into months. The tiny cub grew into a magnificent jaguar, strong, fast, and fearless. Yet despite its wild instincts, it never forgot the girl who had saved its life. An extraordinary bond had formed between them. One that. Hunters moved swiftly through the dense jungle, their sharpened wooden spears gripped tightly in their hands. Every broken branch, every footprint in the soft earth, brought them closer to their target. The tribal chief had given only one command: bring the girl back alive and kill the jaguar. Meanwhile, the young girl had no idea how close the danger had become. She and the jaguar wandered peacefully through the ancient forest, stopping beside a crystal-clear river. The jaguar lowered its head to drink while the girl filled a large leaf with fresh water. For a brief moment, the wilderness felt calm. Then the jaguar suddenly froze. Its ears stood upright. Its nose caught a scent carried by the wind. Something wasn't right. A low growl rumbled from deep inside its chest. The girl immediately recognized the warning. She had learned to trust the jaguar's instincts. Without asking questions, she quietly stepped behind a fallen tree. Only seconds later, a spear flew through the air and slammed into the tree trunk exactly where she had been standing. The hunters had found them. The forest exploded into chaos. Birds burst into the sky. Monkeys screamed from the treetops. The jaguar let out a deafening roar that echoed through the valley. The girl and the jaguar sprinted into the thick jungle as the hunters chased them relentlessly. Branches whipped across their faces. Thorns tore at their skin. The ground was uneven, covered with rocks, roots, and hidden holes that could break an ankle with a single misstep. Still, they kept running. The hunters were fast, but the jaguar was faster. Again and again, it stopped just long enough to make sure the girl stayed close before racing ahead to clear a safe path through the dense forest. Hours passed. The chase showed no signs of ending. As the sun slowly began to set, dark clouds gathered above the jungle. Thunder rolled across the sky, and heavy rain poured down, washing away footprints and fill. The roaring waterfall, the girl slowly stepped outside the cave and looked around. Everything seemed quiet, too quiet. The jaguar suddenly lifted its head and sniffed the air. Its muscles tightened, and a deep growl echoed through the cave. The hunters had not given up. Instead of following the obvious trail, the tribal chief had divided his warriors into smaller groups. They surrounded the forest from every direction, slowly closing the trap. The girl realized they were running out of places to hide. Together, she and the Jaguar climbed higher into the Rocky Mountains, hoping to escape before the hunters reached them. But the chief had already guessed their plan. As they reached a narrow mountain pass, dozens of primitive hunters suddenly appeared on both sides of the trail. There was nowhere left to run. The chief stepped forward with a long wooden spear. "You belong to the tribe," he shouted. "That beast does not." The girl stood her ground. She shook her head and stepped in front of the Jaguar, refusing to let anyone harm the animal that had saved her life again and again. The hunters slowly moved closer. Every spear was pointed toward the Jaguar. For a few terrifying seconds, the entire forest fell silent. Then one impatient hunter threw his spear. In a flash, the Jaguar leaped into the air, knocking the spear away before it could strike the girl. The battle had begun. The Jaguar charged through the hunters with incredible speed, forcing them backward without giving them a chance to surround the girl. Using only a sharpened wooden spear, the girl defended herself beside her loyal companion. The hunters attacked from every direction. Dust filled the air. Spears crashed against rocks. Shouts echoed through the mountains. Just as the chief prepared for one final attack, a deafening roar shook the valley. Everyone froze. From the dense forest emerged an enormous saber-toothed cat. The giant predator had been drawn by the noise of. Its thunderous roar echoed through the mountains, sending birds into the sky and shaking the ancient forest. Panic spread instantly among the primitive hunters. The tribal chief shouted for everyone to stand together, but it was already too late. The enormous predator charged straight toward the nearest hunter, scattering the warriors in every direction. Spears fell to the ground as survival became their only concern. The young girl knew this was their only chance. "Run," she whispered to the Jaguar. Together, they raced through the Rocky Mountain Pass while the hunters struggled to fight off the giant beast behind them. Loose stones rolled beneath their feet. Sharp cliffs surrounded them on both sides. One wrong step meant certain death. Suddenly, the ground beneath the girl cracked. She slipped toward the edge of a steep cliff. For one terrifying moment, she hung over the endless drop, desperately clinging to a broken tree root. The Jaguar spun around without hesitation. Ignoring the danger, it raced back toward the cliff. The girl reached out with one trembling hand. The Jaguar grabbed the thick animal hide wrapped around her arm with its powerful jaws and pulled with all its strength. Slowly, painfully, she climbed back onto solid ground. Breathing heavily, she wrapped her arms around the Jaguar's neck. The bond between them had never been stronger. Behind them, the sounds of battle slowly faded. The surviving hunters had finally driven the saber-toothed cat away, but they had suffered heavy losses. The tribal chief climbed onto a high rock and looked across the valley. Far in the distance, he saw the girl and the Jaguar standing together on a narrow mountain ridge. For a long moment, he simply watched. Then, without another word, he lowered his spear. Perhaps for the first time, he realized that not every wild creature was born to be an enemy. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the girl and her loyal Jaguar disappeared into teach. Golden rays slipped through the ancient trees as the girl and her loyal Jaguar stood quietly on a high mountain ridge, looking back at the world they had left behind. For the first time in many days, there were no hunters, no spears, no fear, only silence. The girl smiled as she gently rested her hand on the Jaguar's head. Together, they had survived impossible dangers, proving that trust could be stronger than fear. But survival in the prehistoric world was never easy. As they continued their journey into an unknown valley, they discovered a land unlike anything they had ever seen. Crystal clear rivers flowed between towering cliffs. Huge ancient trees stretched toward the sky. Herds of mammoths grazed peacefully across the open plains. Colorful birds filled the air with songs the girl had never heard before. It felt like a forgotten paradise. The Jaguar carefully explored the valley, making sure no predators were nearby. Every few moments, it looked back at the girl, as if reminding her that she was no longer alone. Days passed peacefully. The girl learned which plants were safe to eat. She discovered hidden caves for shelter. She crafted stronger wooden spears and stone tools. The jaguar hunted only when necessary, always returning to share the safety of their new home. Their remarkable friendship grew stronger with each passing day. Far away, however, the tribal chief often thought about the girl who had chosen compassion over violence. He remembered how the jaguar had saved her life instead of attacking her. Slowly, his hatred began to fade. He started teaching the younger hunters an important lesson. Not every creature is our enemy. Respect the wilderness, and it may one day protect you. The girl's story became a legend, passed from one generation to the next. It was the story of courage, the story of kindness, and the story of an impossible friendship between a human and one of nature's greatest predators. Millions of years. Deep inside the untouched valley, life slowly became peaceful again. Every morning, the girl climbed a tall rocky hill to watch the sunrise while the jaguar quietly guarded the area below. She was no longer afraid of the wilderness. It had become her home. Each day taught her something new. She learned which trees produced sweet fruit, where the cleanest water flowed, and which caves stayed warm during the cold nights. The jaguar also adapted to their new life. It hunted only when necessary and fiercely protected the valley from dangerous predators. Whenever the girl wandered too far into the forest, the jaguar would silently appear beside her, as if it had been watching over her the entire time. Their friendship became stronger than ever. One afternoon, while exploring a distant part of the valley, the girl discovered something unusual. Hidden beneath thick vines was the entrance to an enormous cave. Inside, the walls were covered with strange marks and primitive drawings left by humans long before her own tribe had existed. There were handprints, pictures of giant animals, and one drawing that immediately caught her attention. It showed a human standing beside a large wild cat. The girl stared at it in amazement. Could someone, thousands of years before her, have shared the same incredible friendship? She gently placed her own hand beside the ancient handprint on the wall. For a moment, it felt as though history itself was speaking to her. Outside the cave, the jaguar let out a deep roar that echoed across the valley. The girl smiled. She now understood that courage, kindness, and trust were far older than anyone could imagine. Her story was not the first, and perhaps it would not be the last. In the next chapter, an even greater challenge would appear, one that would test both the girl and the jaguar like never before. One hot afternoon, dark smoke began rising above the distant trees. At first, the girl thought it was morning mist, but within minutes, the smell of burning would fill the air. The jaguar suddenly stopped. Its ears flattened, its golden eyes locked onto the horizon. Then it let out a loud, warning roar. A massive wildfire was racing through the ancient forest, driven by strong winds. Towering flames leaped from tree to tree. Dry grass ignited instantly, and thick black smoke covered the sky, turning daylight into darkness. Animals fled in every direction. Herds of ancient antelope stampeded across the plains. Wild horses galloped through the valleys. Even giant elephants abandoned their feeding grounds, desperately searching for safety. The girl knew they couldn't outrun the fire forever. She climbed onto a large boulder and searched the landscape. Then she spotted it, a wide river cutting through the valley. "If we can reach the river," she whispered, "we might survive." Without wasting another second, she and the jaguar raced toward the water. The heat became unbearable. Burning branches crashed to the ground around them. Ash floated through the air like black snow. Every breath became harder than the last. Suddenly, a giant burning tree collapsed across their path. The girl stumbled backward. There was no way around it. The flames were closing in. Without hesitation, the jaguar sprinted ahead, leaping over the burning trunk with incredible strength. Then it turned back toward the girl. Its eyes seemed to say only one thing: "Trust me." Gathering every bit of courage she had, the girl ran as fast as she could. She jumped. For one terrifying moment, she was surrounded by fire. Then strong hands met solid ground on the other side. She had made it. Together, they continued running until they finally reached the rushing river. Without looking back, they plunged into the cool water. As they stood in the middle of the river, the The once green forest had become a blackened wilderness. Giant trees stood like dark skeletons against the smoky sky, and the air was filled with the scent of ash. The girl and the jaguar slowly walked through the ruins of their former home. Everything had changed. The berry bushes were gone. The small streams had dried up. Even the songs of the birds had disappeared. The girl realized they could no longer survive there. With one final look behind them, she and the jaguar began walking toward the distant mountains, searching for a new place to call home. For 2 long days, they crossed rocky cliffs, dry grasslands, and narrow canyons. Food was scarce, and every step became more difficult. On the 3rd morning, something incredible appeared. Beyond the mountains lay a hidden valley unlike anything they had ever seen. A crystal-clear river wound through endless green fields. Towering waterfalls poured down the cliffs. Ancient trees, untouched by the fire, stretched high into the sky. Herds of mammoths grazed peacefully across the open plains, while giant prehistoric birds circled overhead. It looked like a forgotten paradise. The girl smiled for the first time in days, but the jaguar remained alert. Its sharp eyes scanned every corner of the valley. Something was watching them. Suddenly, a low growl echoed from the tall grass. The mammoths lifted their trunks in alarm. Birds exploded into the sky. From the shadows emerged a massive saber-toothed cat, larger than any predator they had ever seen. Its long, curved fangs glistened in the morning sunlight. It stared directly at the girl. The jaguar stepped forward without fear, placing itself between the girl and the deadly predator. Neither animal moved. Neither looked away. For several long seconds, the entire valley stood completely still. The greatest battle yet was about to begin. But this time, the outcome would decide who truly ruled the ancient wilderness. T.S. enormous paws pressed deep into the soft earth, and its razor-sharp fangs gleamed beneath the morning sun. The girl held her breath. She knew that one wrong move could mean the end. The jaguar lowered its body, muscles tense, its golden eyes locked on the ancient predator. It refused to retreat. For a long moment, neither animal attacked. The valley fell into complete silence. Then, with a thunderous roar, the saber-toothed cat launched itself forward. The jaguar reacted instantly. It leaped to the side at the last second, avoiding the deadly claws by only inches. The two powerful predators collided, rolling across the ground in a cloud of dust and broken grass. Their roars echoed through the valley. The girl grabbed her sharpened wooden spear, but she knew she couldn't defeat such a beast alone. She had to think. As the battle continued, she noticed something. The saber-toothed cat was stronger, but was also slower. The jaguar was smaller, faster, and more agile. An idea flashed through her mind. She shouted and struck a nearby rock with her spear. The loud sound caught the predator's attention for just a second. That single moment was enough. The jaguar sprang onto the saber-toothed cat's back, digging in with its claws before leaping away again. Enraged, the giant predator charged after the jaguar with all its strength. It never saw the danger ahead. The ground near the river had been weakened by underground water. With one powerful leap, the saber-toothed cat crashed onto the fragile earth. The riverbank collapsed beneath its weight. The massive predator slid down the muddy slope and plunged into the rushing river below. The powerful current carried it away between giant rocks until it disappeared from sight. Silence returned to the valley. The jaguar slowly walked back toward the girl. Breathing heavily, it had several fresh wounds, but it was alive. The girl gently placed her forehead against the jaguar's. "You saved." The girl spent her mornings gathering fruit along the riverbanks while the jaguar quietly patrolled the valley, watching over their new home. For the first time in many months, life felt safe, but the wilderness always held new surprises. One cool morning, the jaguar suddenly stopped in its tracks. Its ears twitched. Its nose lifted into the wind. It caught a scent that didn't belong. The girl immediately noticed the change in her loyal companion. "What is it?" she whispered. The jaguar let out a low growl and slowly led her toward a rocky hillside overlooking the valley. From behind the rocks, They looked down into the open grasslands. The girl's eyes widened. There, near the river, stood a small group of primitive humans. But these were not the hunters from her old tribe. Their clothing was different. Their stone tools were more carefully crafted. Instead of carrying long hunting spears, they also carried woven baskets filled with fruit and medicinal plants. Among them were women, children, and elderly people. They did not seem to be searching for a fight. Still, the jaguar refused to lower its guard. As the strangers explored the valley, one young boy wandered away from the group, chasing a colorful bird through the tall grass. He laughed as he ran, until the laughter suddenly stopped. Hidden beneath the grass was a deep sinkhole. The ground gave way beneath his feet. The boy screamed as he slipped into the darkness. His family rushed toward him in panic, but the hole was too deep. No one could reach him. The girl looked at the frightened child. Without hesitation, she ran toward the sinkhole. The strangers froze in shock. Who was this mysterious girl? And why was a giant jaguar running beside her? The next few moments would decide whether these strangers became new friends or dangerous enemies. The frightened boy clung to the side of the deep sinkhole, his fingers slipping against the loose dirt. Below him, sharp rocks waited. His family cried out in panic, but no one was brave enough to climb down. The girl reached the edge first. Without thinking about the danger, she lay flat on the ground and stretched out her arm. "Hold on," she called. The boy tried, but he was too far away. Every second, the dirt beneath him crumbled a little more. Then the jaguar stepped forward. The great cat carefully lowered itself near the edge, digging its powerful claws deep into the ground for balance. The girl held tightly onto the jaguar's strong shoulders while reaching farther toward the boy. Finally, their hands touched. The boy grabbed her wrist with all the strength he had left. The girl pulled with everything she had. The jaguar leaned backward, using its powerful body to keep them from falling into the pit. Slowly, the boy climbed higher until he finally rolled safely onto solid ground. His mother rushed forward and wrapped him in her arms, tears streaming down her face. No one spoke. Every member of the strange tribe stared at the girl, then at the jaguar. They had expected a savage beast. Instead, they had witnessed an act of courage and compassion. An elderly leader slowly stepped forward. He lowered his spear and placed his open hand over his heart, a gesture of peace. The girl hesitated for only a moment before returning the gesture. The jaguar watched silently. For the first time, it did not growl. The strangers offered the girl fresh fruit and clean water. That evening, both groups sat together around a small fire beneath a sky filled with countless stars. Although they spoke different languages, smiles, kindness, and simple gestures needed no translation. The girl realized something important. Perhaps survival in the ancient world did not always depend on fighting. Sometimes, it began with a single. At night, the campfire burned brightly beneath a sky filled with millions of stars. The girl sat beside the new tribe, sharing roasted roots and fresh fruit. For the first time in years, she felt something she had almost forgotten, a sense of belonging. The children laughed as they cautiously admired the great jaguar from a distance. At first, they were frightened, but when they saw the animal resting peacefully beside the girl, their fear slowly faded. The tribe's wise elder smiled. He believed the girl and the jaguar had been brought together by nature for a reason. But while everyone slept, the jaguar remained awake. Its ears twitched at every sound. Its sharp eyes searched the darkness beyond the firelight. Then, it heard something. A low growl echoed through the trees. The jaguar stood instantly. The girl woke up. "What is it?" she whispered. The jaguar stared into the darkness without moving. Suddenly, several pairs of glowing eyes appeared between the trees. 1, 3, 5, then dozens. A large pack of prehistoric wolves slowly emerged from the shadows. Thin, hungry, and desperate, they had been driven from their territory by the recent wildfire. Now, they had found an easy target, the sleeping camp. The wolves spread out, silently surrounding the tribe from every direction. The elder quickly realized the danger. He ordered everyone to gather the children and climb onto the large rocks near the camp. The hunters grabbed their wooden spears. The girl picked up her own spear and stood beside the jaguar. Neither of them would run. The largest wolf stepped forward and let out a chilling howl that echoed across the valley. In an instant, the entire pack charged. The jaguar sprang forward like lightning, crashing into the lead wolf and sending it tumbling across the ground. The hunters formed a defensive circle around the families. Spears struck the earth. Torches lit up the night. The battle had begun. But hi! The camp echoed with desperate shouts, the clash of wooden spears, and the terrifying howls of hungry predators. The jaguar fought with incredible speed, driving the wolves away from the frightened children. The girl stood shoulder to shoulder with the hunters, using her sharpened spear to keep the pack at a distance. Slowly, the wolves began to retreat. The tribe cheered, believing the danger was finally over. Then, the forest fell completely silent. Even the wolves stopped running. The jaguar froze. Its ears flattened against its head. It stared into the darkness. Heavy footsteps, one, then another, shook the ground. From the shadows emerged an enormous cave lion, larger than any predator the tribe had ever seen. Its golden mane glowed in the firelight, and its amber eyes never left the girl. The wolves had not attacked the camp by chance. They had been fleeing from the true king of the wilderness. The cave lion let out a deafening roar that echoed across the valley. The hunters stepped back in fear. Even the bravest warriors lowered their spears. The jaguar slowly walked forward, placing itself between the cave lion and the girl. Neither predator blinked. Neither looked away. The elder whispered, "This is a battle no human can stop." For several tense moments, the two great cats circled each other. Then the cave lion attacked. It struck with enormous strength, forcing the jaguar backward. The girl knew her friend couldn't win through strength alone. Looking around, she noticed burning branches from the campfire scattered across the ground. An idea flashed through her mind. She grabbed a flaming branch and shouted at the hunters. "Follow me." One by one, the tribe picked up burning torches. Together, they formed a wide circle of fire around the cave lion. The giant predator hesitated. It roared with anger, but it hated the flames. As the circle grew smaller, the cave lion realized it was trapped. With one final arrow, the morning after the battle was unusually quiet. A cool breeze drifted through the valley, and the tribe slowly began repairing the damage left by the wolves. Children gathered firewood, hunters sharpened their spears, and the elders thanked nature for another day of survival. But the girl couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching them. The jaguar sensed it too. Its eyes remained fixed on the towering cliffs above the valley. Then, a shadow appeared. Standing on the edge of a rocky mountain was a lone hunter unlike anyone the girl had ever seen. He was taller than the other tribesmen. His clothing was made from the thick fur of giant animals. Across his back hung a beautifully crafted spear with a sharp black stone tip, far stronger than the weapons used by either tribe. Without a word, the mysterious hunter began walking down the mountain. The entire camp fell silent. Hunters quickly raised their spears. The jaguar stepped in front of the girl, growling deeply. But the stranger did something unexpected. He slowly placed his spear on the ground. Then he raised both hands to show he had come in peace. The elder cautiously stepped forward. The stranger spoke in a different language, one no one in the camp could understand. Although his words were unfamiliar, his expression told another story. He wasn't looking for a fight. He was trying to warn them. Using gestures, he pointed toward the distant mountains. Then he drew a huge shape in the dirt with a stick. It had enormous horns, powerful legs, and a body larger than any mammoth. The tribe stared in confusion. The stranger then pointed toward the valley and shook his head. Danger was coming. Before anyone could ask another question, a deep rumble echoed across the earth. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble. Birds burst into the sky. The mammoths lifted their trunks and ran. Even the jaguar's ears flattened with fear. Far beyond the mountain's summit, the ground shook so violently that small stones rolled down the mountain slopes. Trees swayed, and birds fled into the sky in massive flocks. Every animal in the valley sensed the danger. The mammoths trumpeted in fear. The deer sprinted across the grasslands. Even the powerful jaguar stood completely still, its eyes fixed on the distant mountains. Then, the trees began to fall. One after another, giant ancient trees crashed to the ground as something enormous forced its way through the forest. The tribe held their breath. Out of the dust emerged a gigantic woolly rhinoceros, larger than any beast the girl had ever seen. Its massive body was covered in thick brown fur, and two enormous curved horns pointed straight ahead like deadly spears. The giant animal wasn't hunting. It was terrified. Something had frightened even this unstoppable beast. Suddenly, the stranger from the mountains shouted and pointed toward the cliffs. The girl looked up. Huge rocks were breaking loose from the mountainside. A massive landslide had begun. Thousands of tons of stone thundered toward the valley. The woolly rhinoceros charged blindly through the camp, smashing trees and sending everyone running for their lives. The girl grabbed the nearest child and pulled him out of the animal's path. The jaguar leaped across the falling rocks, guiding frightened families toward higher ground. The mysterious hunter helped the elders climb the steep hillside while the tribe worked together like never before. For several terrifying minutes, the valley echoed with crashing boulders and desperate cries. Then, silence. The landslide came to an end. The valley had changed forever. The river had been blocked by enormous rocks, creating a new lake where the old path once existed. Many of the ancient trees were gone, but every member of the tribe had survived. The elder looked at the girl, the jaguar, and the mysterious hunter. Without their courage and teamwork, no one